Hi there, everyone. It is noon. It is Monday. Welcome to a special edition of the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break, along with Edgar Zazweta, ACSA's Senior Director of Policy and Governmental Relations. I'm Naj and Edgar, ACSA's Senior Director of Marketing and Communications. Welcome to this special broadcast. We invite you to jump on in on our chat. Let us know where you're at today. Say hello. Edgar, how are you this morning? It's a special Monday.
Yeah, it's a special Monday. I feel like we've been on here so often. We're getting close to maybe this is getting close to being a daily show, and I'm not trying to suggest that, but I see you more often than I'm used to here, Naj. But good to be back. Obviously, a lot of stuff going on. We wanted to give as much information to our members as we could here in a prompt fashion. That's right. Instant analysis details for you. So good to have so many of you guys jumping on. Thomas and Vicky, Tiffany, Maria Thompson, our great board member. Everybody's jumping on board. So hello to all of you. Let's get straight to the main topic here, which is this proposal announced this morning about reopening schools. I'm going to go through some of the highlights for you. $2 billion in Proposition 98 funding available for school districts offering in-person instruction by April 1. In-person instruction requirements differ depending on the county tiers as defined by that blueprint for a safer economy. Districts currently offering in-person instruction do not need to modify their plans to be eligible for the funding. An additional $4.6 billion will be distributed to all school districts proportionally based on LCFF, with an additional $1,000 for each homeless student intended for. We lost him early on, but we'll get Naj back in a second. Oh, there he's back.
There you go. Sorry.
He almost got through that. Almost.
I know. The Wi-Fi out here. What can I say? You know what? Let's go ahead and bring in ACSA Executive Director Wes Smith, who joins us here. Wes, let me go through some of the collective advocacy as we bring you in, because advocacy has been so important. All collective bargaining requirements have been removed. COVID-19 testing cadence requirements were dramatically curtailed to be uniting the schools in the state's purple tier. Limited to schools in the state's purple tier of the blueprint. Schools looking to expand in-person services will have less stringent pathway to exit the purple tier. Two more for you, folks. Schools currently offering in-person instruction are not required to take additional actions or abide by the new conditions, and vaccinations are prioritized for educators, but staff vaccination is not a condition for returning to in-person instruction. There you go. Details for you. Wes, your initial reaction after hearing this is coming late last night and then actually seeing it this morning.
Well, I'm excited. I'm excited for our students and the educators who serve them. We tell our members all the time, you can either influence policy or be bound by it. And our members decided to speak with one voice, to amplify their voices, to be influencers. And that is going to benefit our students greatly. We get asked all the time, as this has been happening, you know, what's the calculus? You're going to have to pick sides. You're going to pick the legislature side. You're going to side with the governor. And I've said all along, ACSA is picking the side of students and the adults who serve them. That there are things that will reopen our schools safely, and then there are things that will stop the reopening and force closures. That's been our position all along. And if you look at our position paper, our advocacy letters recently, that deal that is going to be voted on Thursday echoes so many of the things our experts said with one voice. So I'm excited.
Yeah, our great board member, Daniel Hernandez, who's over at Sac City Unified, Edgar, says hello to the new daily show from Sac City Unified. He's carrying that right on. Kimberly and Leila Steve Collins, good to see you guys. Edgar, let's go right into this. What are you hearing as far as additional details and from the governor's office and inside the Capitol?
Yeah, thanks, Naj. And this is multitasking at its best, because I'm like pieces of paper, my phone, trying to keep it an email. So we'll see how I do here. I think the caveat that we always give the caveat here when something has been announced, and we had access to some briefings before this was made fully public. So we have a little bit of information, but the caveat is we have always the details matter, and trust us, we're going to dig in there. And if we find something that was not what we thought, we'll point that out. But I have to say, overall, like Wes said, this is a positive outcome. I think we have to acknowledge that especially what we saw just 7 days ago, pushing our members, calling on folks at the 11th hour, calling on folks over the weekend to push the policymakers. This is a reflection that they listened. They listened on it, and we'll find things that it's not going to be on 100% of the issues, but I think on the biggest pieces that we were hitting on, the things that Wes talked about, the collective bargaining, the testing cadence, and we can go into a little bit of detail on those pieces, on really not the grandfathering in. What we mean by grandfathering is making sure that those school districts that have already been open for in-person instruction don't have a requirement to do anything different. They actually listen to us. And, as good as we are as a team and our advocates and our members, they don't always listen to us. They listen to us on a number of the issues. So in terms of your question, the governor's office just announced this in conjunction with the speaker and the Senate pro tem. They were here locally in Elk Grove Unified announcing the deal. Kind of a nice bookmark there, because Chris Hoffman and his district, as you know, Naj, one of the first in the state to publicly close schools last year because of the fears around the pandemic, and took a lot of heat there, right? And so it's a nice bookend that they're back in Elk Grove announcing this deal, also highlighting that they're also one of the biggest districts now that are announcing getting back into the classroom. So I think some good symbolism there, and obviously highlighting some of the work of our members, and one in particular there, Chris Hoffman, the superintendent from Elk Grove.
Yeah, and folks, go ahead and drop your questions into the chat. Where we're going to have Wes and Edgar try and answer as many of them as possible during this short broadcast. But we also want to have you look ahead to our 3 o'clock webinar today with the ACSA Governmental Relations team. Those of you who got the email today, there is a link for that webinar for you to register. It comes at 3 o'clock. Also of note, Chris Hoffman was a guest of ours on the ACSA campus tour over the summer, talked about what brought them to the point of being the first school district in the state to have to shut down due to COVID. So go ahead and take a look at that. That is available on our YouTube channel, which many of you guys are watching right now. Wes, let's talk collective bargaining, because
He paused on collective bargaining.
I could channel, because I've spent so much time with Naj. I know what he's going to ask here.
Go ahead, Edgar. Ask away.
If you want to touch on just the changes that we're seeing there in terms of that language, and I already see a few questions in the chat there, so I could chime in as well. But just your thoughts. Obviously, this was a big push for us in our advocacy. Based on what we've been told in the briefing, kind of give the summary there on those changes to collective bargaining.
Yeah, and I would say there's no stronger voice in the state around this issue, and a couple of the others as well, but especially this one, than our members in ACSA around the state, because they're the folks who do this work, and they understand the implications of codifying something that even tangentially can affect them. And so we were saying all along that while we absolutely agree that our plans are much better when they're co-created, when we consult with the experts in our systems. We really collaborate and work together. But we also understood that collective bargaining has been an impediment to people coming back to work, that some folks just won't agree regardless of the mitigations that are offered. And so if the interest is to get back to in-person instruction, then we can't put these impediments in front of our leaders as they try to meet the needs of their students. And I got to give the governor credit for this. He takes a lot of heat. But when he listened and understood that this could not just be used against those trying to reopen, but against those who had already opened to force closure, he pivoted. And he's been a strong advocate on this issue since he listened. And so this is huge. This allows our folks to continue to work collaboratively at the local level, but not constrain them, and allow those who have opened and demonstrated that they can do this safely to remain open. This is a huge piece, a big win for our students, a win that our students only realized because of the voices of the leaders on this, this broadcast and around the state, the educational leaders at the site, district, and county level.
Wes, and I'll add just a little piece on that because I know I saw the question about clarification of what the requirement is. So to be clear, obviously all districts know this. There's requirements per era in terms of what we have to negotiate with our employees, and obviously that still remains a current law. What we had been pushing for is don't add on any other requirements on top of that. The references to collective bargaining, and specifically for schools that had already opened, that schools that had already been open for in-person instruction, that prior to this deal have already been back. We wanted to make sure that there was nothing new for them. The old language stated that, yes, you will grandfather you in, but we needed evidence of a collective bargaining agreement or an MOU. So obviously that was problematic for many of our districts. In this latest version, that has been stricken from the proposal. So in other words, if you're a school that was already open, you already posted your COVID safety plan, you've already posted your checklist. There's no new requirement as far as it relates to collective bargaining on that end.
Just want to remind
and Naj, let me say this too. Not only has it been stricken, but people are vocal about it. They want to make sure that folks in the field understand that this has been taken out. Again, that the spirit of the CDPH guidelines and the safety plans, consultation with labor, continues to be the activity that they support. And so that's important that, you look at some of the reporting already, and this is being lifted up because it's really, really, really important for the folks at the local level to hear this. And I'm not saying our members will hear it. It's important for others to hear it also.
Let me jump in and just let you guys know that we've got questions coming in. Wes and Edgar are, of course, monitoring those, and they're going to answer as best as possible as we continue to get details. Be aware, we've got that 3:00 webinar coming up. And of course, our normal ACSA Legislative Lunch Break live and interactive Wednesdays at 1 p.m. on the same channel that you're watching. This is for both of you, because 1 week ago, we were talking about the issues that we had with the proposed deal inside the Capitol. Phil Ting did not hold back with his frustration over an Ed Coalition email that he received, that letter that is available on our resource hub. Can both of you just kind of take us inside how something like this comes together over the last week? Edgar, I'll have you start. How these types of proposals get from people are upset on a Monday to we're talking about something new 1 week later.
Yeah, not to overstate, but I think what we have to give, and it's not us at ACSA, it's really you folks and our members who deserve the credit there, that everybody speaking up last week kind of stalled this. As you might remember, we were talking about how this was heading into a vote just at this time last week, and that was when this budget chair, Phil Ting, had a lot of comments about our advocacy, but despite her feelings, it worked. It stalled that vote. The assembly never moved to advance that bill. The governor made it clear that he was not going to support the version of that bill. I was echoing there. Sorry. And so from there, they negotiated. It got people back to the drawing board, if you will, on some of these issues. And I have to say, the changes that were made over the last week actually followed the framework of the concerns that we had put out in our letter a week ago.
Hey, Wes, can you just kind of dive into this? Because we've kind of seen things change over the last couple of months, the tenor of how things are moving. We've seen the governor take a different stance than what the discussion has necessarily been with other elected leaders. Can you talk a little bit about how these types of things come together and what you've been hearing over the last week?
Look, people have to be open to listening, and that's important. And then you have to have folks who are willing to speak up, as we've said, very, very important. And then you have to come up with some innovative ways to get those people willing to speak up in front of those who are willing to listen, right? That's how it works. And eventually, I said early on, the governor was willing to listen. We brought them on to that unique opportunity, that fireside chat. And I think that fireside chat was a game changer. I think it caught the attention of folks, not just in California, but all over the country about what the direction could be. So that was important. And then as folks weren't really ready to listen, we activated some members. We did some grassroots advocacy. We did a text campaign, an email campaign. And you know, I was very honest last week, and I said I was disappointed that we were called tone deaf by people that were not willing to listen, right? Well, kudos to them, because at the end of last week, they decided to start listening, and they looked at what our members had to say. And over the weekend, they were able to get to a deal because they were ready to listen. So again, you've got to have people ready and willing to listen, people ready and willing to speak up, and opportunities to bring them together. And that's what we saw happen over the last couple of months.
Hey, Edgar, I know that you've been looking at the chat just to see some of the questions.
Yeah.
I know we're going to go ahead and forward some of those to your staff for the 3 o'clock webinar, but any questions you wanted to address?
Yeah, I'll touch on 2 issues, which I know are kind of the theme of the questions. It's about who needs to be served, what's the definition of in-person instruction, and how does this testing cadence work? I'll give a bit of an answer now, but I'm going to plug our own thing here at 3 o'clock, and we're going to get a chance at 3 o'clock to go deep dive into some of these, and we're bringing in some other resources, some of our partners. So please, we'll try to touch on a little bit on here. So just kind of the overview there. In-person instruction, and this is similar to previous proposals, that's instruction under the immediate supervision of a certificated employee. So obviously you got to have a teacher there in order to meet that requirement for in-person instruction. Now here's the tiers, and I'll give a bit of an overview. And at 3 o'clock, we'll actually have a slide for this to be very clear for everybody. If you're in deep purple, as we're calling it now, so if your case counts are above 25 per 100,000 daily case counts, average daily case counts in your county are above 25 per 100,000, then the folks that have to be prioritized are these specialized cohorts, these prioritized pupils, if you will, foster and homeless youth, English learners, students with disabilities, pupils at risk, kids who don't have access to technology. Those are the cohorts if you're above 25 per 100,000. So if your transmission is really high, the only kids you have to serve are these folks to be eligible for the funding. If you keep going down, if you're under that threshold but still in purple, there's a requirement to serve those cohorts, so those kids I just talked about, in addition to TK through 2nd grade. That would be for purple. Once you get into the red, orange, and yellow, still have to prioritize obviously those student cohorts. Then you have to expand to TK through 6th grade. So then it goes to all of elementary. And one note, and we get the question, it's 5th and 6th, regardless, depending on whether your district goes to 5th grade in middle school or 6th grade. The key here is elementary students have to be served once you enter red. And one new component that hadn't been talked about in previous versions, you have to add on at least 1 grade level above 6th grade. So at least you have to start the transition to these middle school, high school students. We get the question a lot. What about everybody else? What about secondary? So they don't go as far as saying you have to bring back all secondary, but the expectation is that you have to start that process. On a related note, because I know we get the question a lot, so the testing cadence that Naj was talking about, only districts operating in purple have to follow the testing cadence. So if you're under 14 per 100,000, that's once every other week. If you're above the 14 per 100,000, I know it gets confusing with all of the case counts, that's every week. So that's the only place there's a testing cadence required is only in purple. If you're in red, yellow, orange, there's no requirement for COVID testing. They will make you, as part of your COVID safety plan that you have to publicize, just state what is it that your district's doing on testing. But there's no requirement. You have to do something specific.
Want to let you guys know that the governor did mention that there's an expectation that 7 counties will move from purple to red when the CDPH guidelines are updated, when those figures are updated. So we'll see which 7 counties move from purple to red. Also, on our website, and Gianna Miller, our social media star, will go ahead and put this onto the chat as well. We've put a comparison between the 2 versions of the school reopening plan up on the ACSA Resource Hub. We'll put that link here in the chat for you guys to take a look ahead of a Thursday vote. And Wes, that takes me to this proposal, a possible vote on Thursday. What else needs to be done? From our members' standpoint, what else needs to or can be done?
Yeah, it's important. Naj, before I get to that, let me just kind of tag on to some of the things that Edgar was mentioning. He's talking about what must be done, but that doesn't limit what can be done. So if you're willing to bring back more groups, middle school, high school, you're permitted to do so. Even in the purple tier, you're permitted to do more than less. Although in the purple tier, as he said, that cadence is in place, okay? But we're hearing that some rumors that the purple tier is going to change, that it's going to be easier to get out of purple into red. So this could really be a game changer for some folks who are struggling because they're close to red but not quite there. And then on this grandfathering in, again, if you have been open, you're truly grandfathered in for this incentive money. I mean, all along we said if you make them give a renegotiated CBA or MOU, that's not grandfathered. Well, they took that out. The testing cadence, you don't have to worry about it. You are grandfathered in. That's brilliant. My theme on this has been the power of your voice on behalf of your students. So between now and Thursday, what do? Well, let's remind them of the deal they've struck. Let's make sure that on Thursday, your elected officials vote for this deal. So continue the messaging, however you've done it. It's been working. Keep it up. Thank them for the deal that they negotiated, where they are. Let them know that you support this deal. And look, there are going to be things, you'll learn more at 3 o'clock. There are a couple of things with the $4.6 billion that you don't love. But I'll tell you what, the incentive really follows our advocacy. And the 4.6 is doable according to most of our members. So if that's where you are on these things, as you learn more, let them know. Then this Thursday, we'll be able to celebrate what we're excited about today.
Hey, Edgar, I'm seeing a lot of questions about the 4 feet, 6 feet equation. Is there anything that we can, I've seen the question come up several times, which is why I ask.
Yeah, nothing in this legislation really. So this is where it gets a bit confusing. The 4 to 6 feet was per the California Department of Public Health guidance that was updated on January 14th. That hasn't been touched as part of this legislation. These were the statutory requirements as it relates to bringing down funds. As Wes noted, and we can't confirm here, but we have our ear to the ground, and we know there's going to be some potential changes on the blueprint, on the tiers, on some of the health guidance. That's not part of this proposal, SB 86. I will say on the 4 to 6 feet, I think that's probably the next epicenter of our advocacy, right? This is about what are the requirements to draw down the funds, who needs to open in what tier. I know I saw the question earlier. Let me make sure I make very clear about that. Yes, if you're in hybrid, that definitely counts. So if you're offering hybrid instruction, you are eligible for you've met those conditions to draw down the funds. We know the 4 to 6 feet of distancing is a huge issue in order to get some schools to progress in-person instruction. You may be in a hybrid now, already starting to think about the fall in terms of what will that look like. I will say, even though there's not a change in that today, I think the governor's office is sensitive to this whole notion, and the question we've gotten many times from you folks. As vaccination rates are increasing, is there going to be other changes to the metrics? And I think that's the type of issues we'll be on the lookout here, and I think there'll be more information to come.
Hey, Edgar, can I Can I help with, even though Edgar's going to get nervous now because he's been in all the briefings, I've been on about maybe a third of them over the weekend. So he may be further ahead. But people keep asking about the testing cadence. And again, the only requirement for testing cadence, as I understand, Edgar, is if you're in the purple and you want the incentive money. If you are grandfathered in or rather, you're not in purple, then it's just the testing guidelines that have been a part of the guidelines all along that you've addressed in your safety plans. Would you agree with that interpretation as you've seen it in writing now, Edgar?
Yes, that is correct. So essentially, for those that were already doing it, there's no new requirement there in terms of, and that was something we were concerned about. So if you and they're actually giving you till March 31st. So if there's an agreement that comes in place even before March 31st, and it'll give me a chance to touch on this very quickly on the deadlines. It's the requirement to start providing in-person instruction is April 1st, must be done before May 15th. Every day you go past April 1st, the district will be, there'll be a proportional reduction made from that grant amount. But yes, to your point, Wes, if there's not an agreement, if there's already a plan in place before then you're done. You do not have to follow the testing cadence, even if you're in purple.
Yeah, and those who aren't in purple, all bets are off. Again, it's guidelines, not cadence requirements, like we've been, advocating all along. And Edgar, you brought up that point about if they have a plan to reopen, they haven't reopened yet, they want to be grandfathered in. That you said something. I don't want to brush by it too quickly. All they're requiring is that your plan be approved by the board. Okay, so instead of having your plan negotiated, it has to be approved by the board. Now, for some of you, your plans weren't. You shared with the board publicly, but they didn't vote on them, depending on how you implemented your plan. So you'd have to go back to a board meeting if you're interested in the incentive money, right? If you're not, then don't worry about it. And just take that back to your board for an approval, the same plan you have to reopen, and do it by the date that Edgar gave you, and you qualify for that money. So they've even made those of you that have a plan but haven't quite opened, get open and receive the incentive money. They've made it much more simple than it was last week.
Yeah, and we'll dig into this at 3:00 for those, because I know the language matters. It's actually even more specific than that. It only pertains to testing. If you want to go forth and you're going to provide the testing in purple, you've actually met the requirement by just posting your COVID safety plan and your CSP. If you want to be excluded from the testing requirement, then to Wes's point, the board needs to adopt it by March 31st. So it's even a little less restrictive than that.
Folks, I do want to have, I want to plug for you to follow us on Facebook, to follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, subscribe to our YouTube channel, because you'll get alerts for when we're about to do a live broadcast. That leads me to promo our Wednesday, 1 p.m. live and interactive ACSA Legislative Lunch Break. We will obviously have more details on this proposal and a full show for you as well. Also want to remind you, register for that 3:00 webinar today, because we'll have more information from our governmental relations team. Edgar, Wes, so good to have you guys on the show today. Again, 3:00, register for that webinar, and then we will see you 1 p.m. Wednesday for the live and interactive ACSA Legislative Lunch Break. Have a great rest of the day. We'll see you later this afternoon.